Welcome. Today we're going to continue our Lojong trainings. Before we get into the next formal training, we're going to lay some groundwork in looking at a concept, or rather the virtue of compassion. So the next several aphorisms and trainings will be based around this idea, and it's important that we just set some foundations so we can work with it in contemplation before we dive into the next step. In reality, or perhaps traditionally, that each training is meant to be meditated upon and worked with in your life for an extended period of time before moving on to the next one. And so you could pick this up in your practice, the first four that we've done so far, perhaps that you revisit them and pause and allow them to show up in an innate way in your daily existence, just letting them percolate like, aha, here is an instance of recognizing the inescapability of suffering, or here is an instance in seeing the inevitability of death and the preciousness of life, these things. Anyhow, so back to what we're going to do today. We're going to investigate a little more closely the role, the idea of the virtue of compassion and how it relates to meditation. So I'm going to come back to Norman Fisher here, and he is the author of this book, Training in Compassion, which has inspired these meditations that we're doing. So he defines compassion as the ability to feel another's feelings and to care about those feelings, so to feel a heartfelt connection, plus the willingness to act for the sake of those feelings or upon the inspiration of those feelings. So sympathy would be being able to feel the feelings and care, to have that sit within your heart, but action, maybe yes, maybe no. Compassion gets over that boundary. Like, I'm willing to say or do something about this. So how does compassion show up in meditation? And what is the, importance or role of compassion in this practice? Compassion is one of the virtues that really blurs the boundary between oneself and other. This division between self and other is known to be a mental construct. It's something that our mind defines, but that we have no exact encapsulation of this is me and this is other, and there's no firmness about that boundary that separates us from other people, or other sentient beings or the world at large. But our mind really does harden this construct in the feeling of ego and personality and identity. So it's important to have these feelings, but when they get in the way of us being able to act in a non-selfish way or in a compassionate way, then it can be problematic. And so we're looking to quieten the mind's boundary between self and other. And we can do this in meditation because one of the main tools of this mental construct is our thoughts. Our thoughts are so often autobiographical and so often establishing and reestablishing this feeling of selfhood. And so when we meditate and we begin to settle our mind and open up to a greater and more steady experience of being, that there becomes a quietude of the typical actions of mind. And in that we can feel a more innate connection with other. And that is a process, and there's a whole spectrum of degrees that we can feel in connection between self and other, to a place where the connection is completely implicit and not even recognized as, oh, I am feeling in connection, that those words of I just begin to fall away. All right, I might be digressing a little bit, but we are going to use the virtues of compassion and investigating compassion as a tool to begin to create a willingness and an inspiration for action off of our cushion and out into the world. And the way we're going to look at it today is through turning this compassion inward, as if a good friend or family member that you loved so dearly and you wished for them peace, steadiness, and a good life, and were willing to do something about it to help them get there, can you turn that kind of desire and power and action inwardly? And because there is ultimately no exact divide between self and other, that this cultivation of willingness and actually of doing the action of sitting in meditation will help us become more willing to serve and to act for the benefit of others. So that's the nature of things today. Let's begin. Thank you for listening so far. Okay. So find some comfort in your seat. Let your eyelids soften, so it could be fully closing your eyes or partially closing them. If sometimes you find your eyeballs just keep moving behind closed eyelids, then it may be better to allow your gaze to rest upon something out on the floor ahead of you. Let's set up our hands in a way that helps us be steady and still. So you can choose your mudra. That can be just open palmed or with your index finger and thumb pads joined, or a mudra of your choice. Is there any way that you can allow your hips and your lower body to relax more? Becomes a real commitment to stillness. And then our upper body that is not fixed by its connection to the ground reflects our openness to change. Allow there to be a gentle length up through your spine. Just take a moment to follow the natural curves of your spine from the bottom to the top, and then continue up to the crown of your head. Make sure your jaw feels relaxed. If there's any gathering of the skin between your eyebrows, then also allow those muscles to relax. Let your breath gently rock your body. Let it find a rhythm that's just right. So you have decided to do this. The conditions have come together to allow this to happen. This action of meditation, the choice of doing less for a little while, so we can allow the ingredients of life to show up in the present moment without the need of adding anything more. And wouldn't this be something that you would wish for someone that you love? Wouldn't you encourage them to take this time they are deserving, that it's needed, that it is helpful. This being that you feel directly, this being known by your name, it deserves this time to add nothing more. To connect to a sense of steadiness. To allow the ingredients of life to show up. Being you can feel directly can be helped by this, needs this. Sometimes you notice that this being's mind is wandering, losing track of what's going on in the present moment sometimes. Wouldn't you want this being to stay the course? To know that the mind so naturally wanders away from what's going on right now. Can you show this being that it's right here, this moment is right here. And encourage it to stay with the breath. With these feelings. Sometimes what this being feels, this being by your name, can be difficult. Sometimes it's easier, but sometimes it can be a bit rough. And you know, because you can see beyond this, that what this being is experiencing in this moment, whether it's gentle or more difficult, and it's only temporary, and looking out from the mind into the vaster experience of being, we can find peace again. And this being deserves peace. Doesn't mean that this being needs to ignore what's really coming up, but just to put it in context. Breath to be gentle. The body is still very relaxed, very still. With also a feeling of spaciousness running up through the spine. Being that you feel directly and know so intimately, sometimes is not given what it needs. And what a gift, what an act of compassion to create this time. Resolve to begin, to allow the ingredients of life to show up without adding anything more. This being needs this. We all need this. And giving this being a more convenient name, I deserve this. Just as I'd wish for a good friend or loved one. These hands resting on your legs, they can stay there, or your palms can meet at heart center. And maybe these words that are being offered can be taken for a moment to resonate in your mind and heart, said within. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe and free from danger. May I be free from my ancient and twisted habits. May I be free from all forms of suffering. You can turn this true compassion to the space within. There's no difference in the act that it takes to turn it out into the world. The willingness to act for all beings. Thank you. And before we close, just personally from me to you, I know this is not an easy journey, and these words can feel difficult sometimes to say within. So I hope you let yourself feel them, because you are worth it. Thank you. Namaste.